Okay. Assalamu alaikum. Who's all on?
Alaikum salam. This is Brother Corey in Charlotte.
Okay, Brother Corey from Charlotte. So tonight, Brother Corey, would you be so kind to open us up in prayer?
Yes, sir. Prayer. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the worlds, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful, Master of the Day of Judgment in which we now live. Thee alone do we worship. Thine aid we seek, O Allah, guide us along the right path, the path of those upon whom Thou hast bestowed favor, not of those upon whom wrath is brought down, nor of those who go astray. Ameen.
Thank you, my brother. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, we thank Almighty God, Allah, for His coming in the person of Master Farah Muhammad. And we also thank Almighty God, Allah, for His raising up the most humble and honorable Elijah Muhammad. And we also thank them both for leaving our midst the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So I greet you all with the greeting words of peace and paradise once again. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Dear family, dear brothers, we know that you all are very, very busy, but we greatly appreciate you taking the time out to participate in this ministry class self-improvement series. And once again, the purpose of this series is for to help us to learn, to learn the best practices, so that we can begin to refine our help of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And to help us to do that, we've reached out to various, what I describe as veterans and brothers who are in the ministry. And we also want to get sisters too. I would love to be able to get Sister Ava in the future, but so that they can share with us. We had Brother Dr. Wesley on the first telephone call. He touched on some of the those 5 targets of attack that the enemy is going to touch on tonight. We have Brother Hugh, who's a student minister in San Diego, California. And our brother has a wealth of experience, and you'll hear from him tonight. I hope that you all have the opportunity to read through the material, because we're talking about just administration. That's one of the things we have to, is important that we have to be able to deliver the word, but we also have to know how to operate our individual mosque. So what I'm going to do, Brother Hugh, are you on?
Yes.
Brother Hugh. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, dear brothers, I'm going to first put everybody on mute. And when I put everybody on mute, then, Brother Hugh, you know what number what you have to press. And Brother Hugh will unmute himself, and he'll begin. And after he finishes, we'll take any questions. He'll take any questions that you have. And so let me put everyone on mute right now. So go ahead, Brother Hugh, hit the code so you can begin.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. So everybody else is on mute except you and, you and I.
Thank you, Brother Student Minister Willie. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent and the Merciful, I bear witness there is no God but Allah, Muhammad is His messenger. I want to thank the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan for his undying sacrifices to us in representing the most humble Elijah Muhammad, the exalted Christ, not only to us but to the entire world. I'm honored that Student Minister Willie would ask me to be a part of what I see as a very great endeavor, and for him being brave enough to pick up and to see that we all could grow to be better helpers of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Tonight, he have charged me with the responsibility of talking about what are some of the best practices that we can have as we work to administrate in not just the mosque, because as we're administrating the mosque, remember, student ministers and laborers, while the mosque is the base, the city is our place. And so as we administrate, we also have to look at how does the administration of the affairs of the mosque, how does that intertwine with the greater community which we are going to bring our people, not only those that we fish into the Nation of Islam, those that will come and see our way and become a part of the mosque, but how do we also galvanize them to see that they're a part of a nation that God has now come to redeem from the grips of our oppressors. So I'm thankful to Student Minister Willie for giving me this opportunity and all those who work with him to come up with this course to help to make us better helpers and servants of our people and better helpers of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Now, Brother Minister Willie sent us a reading, and this reading is talking about administration, and it's really in a more of a hospital or a center that's taking care of patients, but it's very relative to where to what we do. So as I talk about, we talk about these 8 principles that is mentioned here. As we talk about the administrators, I'm going to be talking about the laborers and those that come and help in the labor. Now, I may not take these all in order. One of the first things I would say when we talk about administrating in a mosque, one of the most critical things that we must have is laborers meeting. If we're not meeting as laborers, if we're not encouraging the staff to meet, then it's impossible to do the first thing that is on this list. And what's on this list is remember to get input. Listen to feedback. So if we're not having laborers meeting once a week, if we're not encouraging the laborers that are under our charge to have staff meetings, and if we're not having business meetings at least once a month, then we're not going to be as effective as we should be. So the first thing I would say before we even get into those 8 principles, there is 3 levels of meeting that I would like to talk about. And I know we're not talking about meeting for the sake of meetings. We're talking about meeting for the sake of making and setting goals and being able to revisit those goals to look to see exactly how close have we missed the goals. And, of course, we know some of those basic goals, as the FOI and all of us are on, is going after the dead, fishing. So if we don't meet the goal as a mosque as 50, if we don't meet the goal as a study group as I believe as 10, then what are we doing as we meet to talk about that? So in administration, the first thing we have to be able to do is have laborers meetings. So that's the first thing I would say when we talk about how to best practices to administrate, and the best practices should lead to good results. And that's the only way you know it's the best practice, because you're getting the desired result. So, and I'm not going to try to be preachy, because I know some of the things that I'll say tonight, many of you have heard, you may actually already be doing. So this may just be for reminding and encouraging, because sometimes it's easy when we get busy to do our laborers meeting on the fly, to get the facts and then just to do administration on the move. And that's not a way to be able to really grow and develop the things that we should be moving towards. So I'm not trying to preach to anyone, but really just going over what are some of the things that we do and what are some of the things that we see, I believe, that successful mosque or study groups or church or businesses do, and one is meeting. As it relates directly to the mosque, I'm going to talk into that particular situation. So number one, I go back again, laborers meeting once a week to discuss the affairs of the mosque. We only have 35 minutes, so I'm not going to be able to go in depth of what should laborers meeting comprise. But I'll say this, every laborer should have some type of either written report, minimum time is once a month, but preferably every week, even if it's a simple form that you would get, that you know what's going on with the FOI, what's going on in the MGT, what is the actual facts from the secretary. And the secretary already should be easy for him to do his report, because he's got a statement of activity, or she has a statement of activity, and they have their weekly report that we as the student ministers are already reviewing and approving. So very critical, and the protocol director, of course, to talk about that. Number two in meetings is that each laborer, if they're to cultivate the correct leadership for us to be able to be successful in the mosque, particularly when we have a linear type structure and a military structure, that means instructions are passed down from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, the national laborers, the regional laborers, down to us, the local laborers, oftentimes maybe through the ministers. And, of course, in the laborers meeting is where we get updates on what may come from each of the departments. So as those instructions come, they have to be filtered down. They have to be passed down. And we know our general number 6, to receive, obey, and pass on. So how and what is the mechanism that we use to pass that on? So the laborers must meet with their staffs. And in other words, whoever the lieutenants are, whoever is on the protocol team, there must be a weekly meeting. It don't have to be long. Those meetings could be before mosque meeting on Sunday, before mosque meeting on Wednesday. We don't have to create another time and space to do it. Just utilize what we're already doing and probably come an hour earlier just to go over some of those things. And like I said, I don't have the time to go into the full depth of all that, but I think it's something that maybe I'll put together and probably share with Minister Willie. And some of you are already doing this. Number 3, the third meeting is monthly business meeting. You know, and so the monthly business meeting where you're making the believers abreast of what is going on in the mosque, what is the financial condition of the mosque, what is going on, and also what is the plan. Because when we look at what our in the Constitution, and it talks about what is the purpose, one of the purpose is to have what? Business meetings. And so to have the business meeting is more than just talking about the bills and talking about, let's say, what the charity is and those things we must talk about, but also in the business meetings, the ministries, the 9 ministries should be a part of that, because within that business meeting we're talking about what are we doing for education, whether it's we have a Muhammad University, whether we have a Saturday school, what are we doing with the ABLE program? Does that come under economic development or the Ministry of Trade and Commerce? So these are the things that we would talk about in a business meeting as far as administrating and governing the mosque. Now, what does those meetings do? From the student minister's standpoint, he's able to now, we look at number 1 in the 8 ways to make yourself an effective administrator. You have to listen to feedback. Well, you're only going to get that feedback on sitting down with your laborers, and you could do it in a group setting. And what I also do, I have one-on-one meetings once a month, or sometimes a little bit more than that. I try to have regular meetings with my laborers one-on-one to get their input, you know, as well as we have every week collective mosque meetings, mosque laborers meeting. And we do it on Wednesdays, not just because headquarters do it on Wednesdays, but we do our laborers meeting on Wednesday at 5:30 before the mosque meeting. This week, because a lot of people are out of work and they're not there, we did ours on Tuesday. We did it a day early at 11 o'clock in the morning. So your laborers meeting can be flexible. But that's how we get the input. And this is how also when the laborers have their staff meeting, this is how they get input, because now they're listening to the lieutenants, what's going on, and to get the feedback from them, and also to be able to teach and instruct them in the way of the best practices, what is expected from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and interact with them to see how they are engaging the believers, male or female, whether sister captain or brother captain. And then, of course, the business meeting, we're now getting feedback from the believing body. Every one of our business meeting, after we present the facts, get different reports, we also get feedback from the believers. Now, this is something that we used to do once a month, and we have to get back to it. We went to quarterly business meeting, but I found out, particularly what we're doing, that's not sufficient. It must be, and I believe the best practice would be, through trial and error, is to have the monthly business meeting. And so that's how we get input, by having the meetings and giving them an opportunity to be able to do that. The other thing we also have to know that we always don't have the answer. So we have to be able to admit when, we don't know, or we listen and we realize that another way may be better. So admitting that we don't know, it should be easy for us, because, in any case it's not covered by instruction. What do? We call the guard. The next one I think is very important to me. Number 3, I'm going to go quickly over number 2 because of limited time, passion. You know, we have, in passion here, we're going to talk about mission. You know, we're going to talk about commitment to that which God in the person came. Master Fard Muhammad, the great Mahdi, came to raise us. We have to have that passion of the resurrection and the passion in looking at the man that's in front of us as an example for us in the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who is a perfect example of his teacher, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Now, I know we have more than student ministers on the line, and they're all the laborers, but this, what I'm about to say, will fit to every last one of us as what is the goal that we set for ourselves when we talk about passion or we talk about ministry. What are we looking at? You know, we say set thy faith being upright, the way in which Allah created us. What are we looking at? What is the goal? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that if I had 10 like Farrakhan, I can take America. That gave me my goal. My goal is what? To be like Farrakhan. Not the way he parted his hair. We tried that already. Not the suit that he wear, the alligator shoes. We did that. It is his character, his morals, his commitment, his integrity. We have to have all of those things in leadership, and just like we see that in him, those that we are serving have to see that in us, that same commitment, that same passion that you and I, particularly the brothers, heard a couple of Mondays ago, and then he came, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan came back on Tuesday at our monthly business meeting that headquarters had with us, and all of us heard his passion, his resolve that he have towards the mission and the assignment given to him. And since we are his helpers, as he has said many times from the third through of the Holy Quran, who are my helpers in the cause of Allah? And we say we are your helpers in Allah's cause. So we have to step up with that type of passion and commitment and then gain the competence that is necessary. And this is why what Minister Willie is doing for us and introducing to us is going to help us with the competence of knowing how to administrate. So with that, passion is our motion, and we know that's the first order, but then the second order is that we have to organize. And organizing, meaning, my dear brothers and sisters, and I'm going to say this, every one of us as ministers and as mosques, we should have some type of a plan. In other words, we should have a plan of action. You could call it your goals. You can have it your mosque vision, whatever it is that you call it. But it's got to be a document that you can open up to see what are we encouraging the believers to do. If you have a goal and your goal is 50 first-timers, out of that 50 first-timers, how many new converts do you want to see out of that 50? What is the percentage? And there's a discussion around there. Well, how are we going to get the 50 first-timers? What is it advertising? Is it going out? What are we going to do? And that has to be a written plan. That's a part of our organization. That is number 4 that we see. And so being well organized is huge for administration because we're able to look back on what we're talking about to see how close we are to the goal and what it is that we're trying to accomplish. Now, this number 5, because I want to go back to something, so I'm going to go through these quickly. It says hire great staff. Now, I know everybody probably laughing at that one. Hire, we barely got money to do this and the other. Well, that's a goal. The goal that we have is to see that every laborer is on charity at this mosque, and many of the believers are working in institutions that we are building. So it may not be an immediate goal. Right now we only have, outside of myself, and it's not necessarily the mosque that is paying, but one of our businesses that we have actually pay myself and the captain, and because Allah have blessed us with that, we're able to now give our service full-time every day towards mosque, and we have a couple other believers that work directly on salary and many other believers that work in one of those entities. But if we're creating and looking at what the minister has given to us as far as paying the staff, that has to come out of business, not necessarily that we generate, because the minister made it plain. As the student ministers, our job is not to make business. That is the believers to pool their resources. But there's a couple things that we can do that could help to employ the believers. One, as we move towards developing the ABLE program, as we move toward developing a school, these are things that will generate and create jobs and employment for believers that we could make sure that it's, that they're being supported, because you're going to be able to get the best from them. We need full-time staff to be able to do that. So we have to work on that. And that's a part of what we call our plan of action that we have for the mosque. Now, that's something that God had blessed us to put together for several years that we have worked on it. And the first time we actually put this together was back in November of 2010. And we're still working, and we revised it at least 3 times since then, the last revision coming in January 2016. So if you go over your plan, you're going to see at the end of the year, we'll look at it and see where we are in 2016, how close do we come to our goals. And one of it was being able to employ our laborers and then work to employ the staff through creating the environment that is there. And so that's a part of the plan. We're working on that. Now, this is the next part, and I hope I'm not going too fast, and I hope I'm not speaking too fast, so I'm going to slow down a little bit. One is the last thing it says here, and we talked about competence when they talk about great staff. We always have to remember that, for me anyway, Allah have blessed me over these 34 years that I've been in this practice. I came to the Nation of Islam. I heard the Honorable Minister Farrakhan in 1982. I went through my my transition and transformation, I should say, and my rebellion when I was at the university in 82 and 83. And then by 84, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. And by the time I left school and graduated with my degrees, I came straight into the Nation of Islam in 1985, and I've been here by the grace of Allah ever since. I say that to say this. One of the things that we have to have when we look at, it says higher grade staff, those of us that and the point I was going to make, let me go back. It's like teaching sometimes. You understand, brother students, a point come up and we go off. The point I was making is that when Allah blesses us with things we have, and we've had restaurants that I've ran, we've had construction companies I've ran over the years, and we now have a security company that we run, and we have a nonprofit. Every one of those things is simply a tool to me to help me in what I believe my job is to help him, And so the business can go. That's not my primary concern. It's not the business, but I run it as a business to be successful. The nonprofit can go, and we look at it to generate and to create opportunities for community and for all those that are involved. But all of those things can go because God blesses us with these things to see how we're going to use them to further our assignment and our mission in the cities that we're in. So all that we have had, I'm thankful to Allah that we have worked to use that to further the assignment and the mission. Now, this part in higher grade staff, I want to look at the hire employees. This is the second to last sentence. It says hire employees who have good people skills. It is very important that we monitor and manage those who interact not only with the guests but with the believers. It's ironic, as I would think, that Minister Willie, that this is actually from the St. Vincent Endoscopy Center, which I think is some type of a medical facility possibly, or clinic or something. I'm not quite sure. I didn't look it up. But it appears like that just looking at what they're saying, particularly talk about patients in the end. And that's what my staff actually, because I actually went over this in my laborers meeting with this particular thing on Tuesday and shared with them what you sent to us, is that we are in a therapeutic environment in the mosque. The mosque is a therapeutic environment. And in this therapeutic environment, you and I are expected to be able to give the best possible care. So that means if we have people in positions of responsibility or just a general believer whose dispensation is not correct and who people skills are not very good, that means we're going to lose people and not even realize why we have it. So we have to be very mindful. That's why the training and the meeting is very, very important. As a matter of fact, it tells us here, hire employees who have good people skills. If they're going to be dealing with patients, they can't be too reserved, she said, the lady who wrote this. So you have to be open, you have to be outgoing, you have to be energetic, you have to be welcoming, and we have to have that type of environment or that type of attraction, which should come from the joy that we should be getting in knowing that God have come for us. So we want to make sure that those that we're working with, that we have good people skills. And I feel that what I do with one of my companies, that's Allah paying me to work in the mosque, because he opened up. It was not for the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and what he has given me, what he has taught me, and what he is teaching me and us, I would not be able to have these connections that we've been able to secure in the city to be able to open up different avenues that are here. Now, this is very important. One of the things they talk about is they say be clear with employees. And it talks about, well, we're going to say the believers or the laborers or the staff. We have to be clear with them. We need to speak up when the staff is making a mistake. We cannot be afraid to correct in the correct manner. And, we leave things going on sometimes a little bit long. I know, God knows I've done this, and you try to train, but at some point a decision has to be made. So we can't think that we've arrived at this time just because. So as administrators and leaders and shepherds and servants, we have to be looking at the flock. We have to be seeing what's going on, because we have a blueprint from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. We have things, so if we continue to go back and feed off of what he's given to us, look at our lessons, look at our study guides, look at the things that we need to be able to apply correctly, we are going to be successful. We have everything that is necessary in our hands, in our tool chest, to make a God. I'm going to say it again. We have everything that we need in our tool chest to make a God. And if we work and demonstrate and look how the minister have done it, and we duplicate and mimic what he is doing, then we will be successful. He has given us all the tools. We just now have to keep going in our tool chest and using that. And I believe I have about 6 more minutes, Brother Willie. It's 6:28, 7 minutes, and I'll finish on time as I go down. So a part of that, we have to be good students of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and that's a part of really being clear, because they have to see clearly that we are representing him and what they're hearing from him at all times, and then we can have the same expectation from them. Now it talks about commitment to the believer, commitment to the patient. We have to always have a good disposition. Now, my wife has to remind me all the time. I've been married 30-plus years now. Honey, a smile ain't gonna hurt nobody. Your brow, when you kind of frown. And sometimes, I'll be honest, you and I know this. We be thinking about something, we don't even realize we frowning. We don't realize we got a star on our face, And sometimes people come and say, "What's wrong?" I said, "What are you talking about?" They say, "You're so serious." And I got to remember, a smile don't cost nothing. Somebody come in the room, I can't be so caught up and so intense in my own problem that I'm so caught up that the believers is afraid to come to me, because I'm wearing my feeling of my problems on my face every time they come. And they're like, "Well, I don't want to bother him." I called the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan one day when I was going through something. And I said to him, "Dear Apostle, I didn't want to bother you." He said, "Brother, if you can't come to me, then who are you going to be able to go to?" Think of him and all that he have on him. And he's going to tell me, he said, "Brother, if you can't come to me, if you can for help or for advice, if you can't come to me to help to sort out your condition, yes, I've got the world on my shoulder." He didn't say this. I'm adding this part in. Yes, yeah. But he said, "Brother, I'm available." The believers got to see us in the same way. We got to be just as open and as welcome, and set the environment where they're able to come to us Not in every single little thing. That's where the other laborers come in and the staff come in. If they're trained correctly, then they will bring it to us. But when that believer needs to talk to us, we got to be there for him when that call comes, or for her when that call comes. So that always stuck with when he said, brother, if you can't come to me, then who are you going to go for? And he basically said, when you work for me is what he said. Well, we have to understand that the laborers and the believers as student ministers, they're working for us as we're working for him to help his father, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So we want to be committed, and we want to know that we have to have that good disposition. We got to have that, that openness, and we have to be warm and welcoming of good spirit. The same way we will be of good quality. This is the final point I want to make when it talks about commit to quality. We can never lower the standards of the Nation of Islam. And this is something the Honorable Minister Farrakhan has said to us often. If we're committing sin, if we're a thief and a robber and a liar and everything else like that, then it's very hard to go before the people and represent certain character flaws that we may have. And God knows none of us here is perfect. Let's make that perfectly honest. I'm not. I'm on the road to be a better human being each and every day. As I look and I see and I look in the mirror and I see the things that I need to work on, I eliminate those. So the standard of the Nation of Islam and the expectation of what is set must be there. The restrictive law and those things that govern our nation, the policies and procedures, the Constitution, we have to commit to the quality and to the integrity of our nation. So a good administrator is making sure that the simplest of policies that come from headquarters, that's in our Constitution, that is a quality that we must have. So in this commit to quality in our clothes, it said the administrator or the laborer need to be committed to, it says the clinical and operational benchmark, staff education, and accountability. So we have to be committed to the self-improvement process, the operations of the nation, and the education of the staff and the believers. This is the re-education and retraining of the black man and woman of America and the world. This is our job. So when the believers or the members of the mosque have been educated, then it becomes important for you now to follow up to make sure that they're absorbing the information, that they get it. Back in the day when I was coming up, my wife and I would ride in the 80s or in the 90s when we were traveling to Sadie there in different places. You would always see the believers talking about the supreme wisdom, quizzing ourselves on English lesson C1 or quizzing ourselves on lost found lesson, actual facts, what the Muslim believe, what the Muslim want, talking about something of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And in our Lionmark book that was put out by our dear brother, Minister Jabril, Closing the Gap, the minister talked about what is the highest level of communication. And that really is to talk about the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and that which we're getting from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. That's the quality that we have to have. So we got to check the believer to make sure that that is the conversation that they're having. In our conversation, we should be hearing him, meaning the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Those are our reference points that we have to have. It must be that information, that body of knowledge that Master Farrakhan Muhammad, God in person, gave to the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad through the Honorable Minister Farrakhan down through us and eventually through humanity. And then it goes back to this. Did they get the meaning of it? And that's become very important. Because if they don't understand the communication, then we will not get the desired result. So to maintain the highest quality, staff members should be accountable for what they do. So we have to be looking, what are the laborers doing? As I spoke with the laborers the other, what are the staff members? But then as student ministers, we have to hold ourselves accountable as to, are we working at a pace that's reflective of the sacrifice that we know, particularly those of us that's been around the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who've been in his sphere, who's been in this nation more than 30 years. But if you've just been here 10 years or you've just been laboring 5 years, you've heard enough from him. If you had just got here a few weeks ago, the 2 days that he addressed us, we've got enough to put us on a course to be able to raise the quality, a high quality, and to really to become that which God came to make us, which is a reflection of himself in the example that he has given us in the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. 1 minute. In closing, to capture life, we have to be more reflective of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and that which he's asking us to do. And to do that, then we must be more mindful of the believer, the condition of the believer, and then we must demonstrate that through service, which reflects the love that we have for him and the love that we have for the believer and the love that we have for ourselves. So if we go through, I hope I didn't take too much, and I hope I didn't take too much time. I want to thank you again, Brother Student Minister Willie, for giving me the opportunity and for having the insight, the foresight, and the ability as a wonderful teacher you are, not only as a student minister, but what you have been doing with setting up the conflict resolution, and also as a teacher that you are naturally in the school system. So thank you. May Allah continue to bless each and every one of us. I greet you all in the greeting words of peace as I came of paradise. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Man, brother Hugh, you hit on so many points, and I know I have a lot of questions, but what I'll do is I'll open it up. So if there are any people who are on that you have a question about what Brother Hugh said, all you would have to do right now is hit *6 to unmute yourself, state your name, what city you're from, and then ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Brother Corey in Charlotte.
Thanks, Brother Corey.
Yes, sir, brother. First of all, thank you so much, Brother Student Minister Willie, as well as you, Brother Student Minister Hugh. Really, in truth, I hate that we ran out of time, but I just had a question.
I know, man.
Yes, sir, because I got a lot of notes. But I know you had made allusion to perhaps sending out something that you would cover, the format or template that you use, and some of the things you cover in your laborers meetings. That would be of great assistance to myself, and I'm sure many other student ministers that may be, a little newer to this aspect of the labor.
Yes. What I'll do, I'll pull that together with Student Minister Willie, and we'll get to that. Let's say the beginning of the year. I don't want to put a lot going on between now and the end of the year. Let's say we've got another 2 weeks, I think, before we come back up. What's our next date, Brother Student Minister Willie? 2 weeks from today.
2 weeks from today. I have to look. See.
It's January. Let me pull this up.
The 5th.
It
looks like it was the 5th.
The 5th?
Yes.
I'll try to get it to us before the 5th. That way we have it before that. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll work on that. Thank you, sir, Brother Mr. Corey.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Well, one of the questions that I guess to other people, if you have a question, you can hit *6. But Brother Minister Hughes, you talked about the laborers meetings, and one of the things, being that I work a full-time job, the captain here works a full-time job, the sister captain, everybody, and sometimes it will be it's very the time-wise. We were meeting. We were meeting consistently on Wednesdays, but the best time for us was actually during the time of the meeting while that was going on. But then the word came down that we couldn't do it. So, what advice do you have in regards to those where all of the staff members are working jobs? As soon as they get home, the most time they have to eat and then get dressed and head to the mosque, in regards to being able to meet.
That's an excellent point. That's why one of the points I made, we got to work to get our laborers free. It's become very critical. One of the things that we did on Wednesdays, we would meet at 5:30, and sometimes we meet at 6:30, or on Fridays. And we would overlap every now and then, just a half an hour into the mosque meeting. So if we just got an hour and a half, then we would have been able to cover certain things within the mosque meeting. So if we started at 6:30, at our laborers meeting, because that would give the laborers that are working, because our secretary is a school teacher as well. And, so by the time he gets his 4 o'clock, he got, duty. So by the time he get here at 6:30, we'd have our meeting from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. And we would stop right there because we didn't want to take up the entire mosque meeting. And some days I would teach on Wednesday, and then we'd all go back out and join, And so that's one of the ways you're able to do it. You have to be able to, can't take up the entire meeting, but you may have to be able to overlap. And I'm not talking about breaking the policy of the Nation of Islam, but if that's the only time you have, then while your assistant is teaching or something else is going on, then you can take up. It's very difficult for us to meet on Sundays, particularly when we're preparing to go to the rostrum. Now on Sundays, the first Sunday of every month, that's when we strive to have our believers meeting before the webcast. We try to do it before the webcast, and sometimes the believers agree we do it after the webcast. I'm saying just sometimes you may just have to do an hour. And I know people don't like doing certain things, but sometimes what we have is phone conferences. If I'm traveling, we'll have a phone conference about certain things that we're working on. We won't talk about no law cases or anything like that, but if we have events, if we have different things that are going on, we're able to talk about those things on a conference call. So I would suggest that maybe every mosque have, just like you have here, Brother Willie, a conference call number, that we all have a conference call number. We have one. And then, some of the times we're able to get a 30 minutes or 45 minutes in a conference call where we don't have to come into the mosque in the space. And what we usually do is we have the laborers email their reports. The secretary always have a written report. You can't get around that. My protocol, she always, most of the time, will have a written report. Haven't been this, in the last few weeks because she's had some health problems. And then the captain and the assistant captain may or may not have it, but they give the report. Where are we with the papers? How's the spirit of the class? And so if they can email that report, then we're able to look at certain things, but we're still having in contact and in communication in what's going on. We could talk about certain things. So it gives us a little bit more contact. So when we get, and we could talk about those relevant issues that we don't want to talk about over the phone, we can do that in 1 hour time. So then we set an agenda to say these are the 3 things that we want to cover within this hour. We've got from 6:30 to 7:30. We got from 7 to 8 o'clock. That's what I would recommend, in that space, outside of trying to meet Saturday evening and Sunday morning, Sunday at the mosque meeting, which is just not good time, is to look to see how we can overlap in those cases. That's what I would suggest.
Yes, sir. So is there anyone else that's on that has a question for Brother Hugh while we have his attention and his time?
Yes, I do have this, Brother Corey, again, just a couple of questions on just a brief synopsis on the reports that you would get from the student captains. I know you mentioned paper, spirit of class, anything else, and then one other question, with each of the laborers meeting with their staff, do you have meeting with your assistant ministers, and if so, what's some of the things that perhaps you would cover in that?
Yes, we do have meetings with the assistant ministers. And I'm going to tell you, Brother Corey, this is one of where that I have to tighten up, because a big area, and I've talked to Student Minister Willie about this in the past, is one of the things that we talked about, and we got to talk about at our orientation and processing class. That's one of the most important things that the student assistant ministers, male and female, can really do, because is that new convert. So we usually meet on I think it's Tuesday, but we have not done it in a couple months. But every Sunday, I have a half an hour meeting. They get here early. I get to the mosque every Sunday a minimum of an hour before the mosque meeting. That's just a routine I've had, I've got to say, for over 20 years.
Right.
It's almost impossible, to catch me coming to the mosque, just before the meeting, or I can't see the last time I came to the meeting after the meeting starts, no matter what I'm doing, unless I'm coming from out of town, flying back in. So I'm at the mosque, so then my staff come in, we have a half an hour meeting, go over certain things, what's going on, and I try to engage my young assistants on as much of the regular basis, but I have to do better. one of the things in the ministry class we were going over is a ministry guide that was developed by Minister Ava, but I also talk about organizational things because I'm always looking for them. If something happened to me, if I move on, if I'm relieved, or whatever happens, are you ready to step in to administrate, and what does that mean? So I try to get them to go places with me, to meetings with me, and to be involved as a whole. So we talk about the labor responsibility with the student ministry, and then to see what are they doing, because I give them a free reign. It doesn't go out. I've got a 24-year-old. My assistant minister is 25 now. Ahmed is 25 or 26. And I said, listen, why aren't you on the college campus speaking? I don't have no problem with that. Why aren't you at the front? So I try to push them. I've got some college students that's in the middle. I said, listen, all of y'all can speak on your college campuses. And then maybe y'all get together and invite me to come one day for question and answer and certain things. Just let me know what's going on. So we try to encourage them to move out as it comes to meeting with my staff. But the most important thing that I've seen recently in my meeting with them is to be better with the orientation and process. That's a focus now. And Brother Willie has sent up some things that he has done, and we're using some of those things in creating the correct orientation and processing class. As far as the reports goes from the laborer, what do you plan? I ask every laborer, what outreach do you have? The sister captain, what women's organization are you involved in the community that we can influence, that we could have as our ally, in the community? The same thing with Brother Captain. Where are you? What are your meetings? What's going on? What communities are you hitting? What is the feedback? What do you need to be more successful? So that's a part of the report that they put in. Is there any drawbacks, any problems? What is it that we need, to be more successful? So those are the things that, they could put in any remarks in the report, because it's also just a reminder for them of things that they want to talk about in the laborers meeting that's going to be in the report, because we're going to talk about the report. The papers dropped from 1,000 to 800. What happened? But even more important, the guests didn't come out. What happened? What's going on with brother so-and-so? So we'll put – I tell you one other thing. I'll say this when you talk about reports. The secretary is very critical. I do two things. We know that in the secretary, charity is one of the things I think a lot of time we don't look at very carefully in the nation, and we don't realize that if a believer don't give, they're actually cutting off a part of a blessing. Allah says in Quran, you and I all know, we can't attain to righteousness unless we spend out of that which Allah have given to us. And when you look at it, so I have the secretary twice a month, on the 15th, the middle of the month, when we get our normal report, to give the actual charity to the sister captain, to the brother captain of each of their classes. This person not done anything. And then at the same time, on the 25th, I have him give by the 26th, he gives it to them to be able to look at it. In addition, what I've recently done, and talking about reports, I've told the secretary, I want you to pull the last 2 months' chair. Now, I have access to it, just like all the student ministers do and coordinators. And I said, but I want us to talk about, have you seen any one of these brothers and sisters that you have pulled into your office? Because sometimes we see charity go down, somebody not giving charity. It's not niggardliness. That person's in straits. That person is going through something. And if the lieutenant didn't tell the captain don't relate to us, we don't know. All we know, we start seeing zeros. And when you see zeros from a believer, something is going on in their life. Whether it's mosque-related or life-related, it's something that something that's going on. So we've got to look at that. So those numbers become very critical and very important. So those reports, give the minister, the student minister, a barometer of what's going on. That's why it's important to have it written down, that he can go back, we can go back and review it. I don't know if I answered the question or just...
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. One last thing, just out of curiosity, brother, and perhaps I'll reach out to you outside because I know we're dealing with a certain amount of time, but the same thing in your protocol, is it reports, is it just where you've been, or is it meetings that they've got set up for you? If you could quickly give me something on that as well.
Yes, sir. The protocol meetings that there have been, what's coming up, for instance, in our last laborers meeting on Tuesday, we know come January we have the Martin Luther King breakfast, Dr. King breakfast. There's 2 of the breakfasts that we go to. At one of them, they're giving me a lifetime member award, whatever it may be. I don't know. I forgot exactly what the protocol told me that it was, from the United African American Ministerial Alliance. And I work very closely with many of the pastors in this city. And so she brought me what the date, the time. And, the meetings that we're having is we're on a building fund and a development that we're doing, the meetings that we have with this organization. So, Sheila, what we have done and what we have coming up. And my protocol has been with me for 20 years. As my secretary at one point, the secretary of the mosque at one point. At one point, she went back to protocol on the Sister Claudette, came back to secretary. She's my personal assistant. Her and her husband been just fantastic, so she's been with me as long as I've been in San Diego. So she actually keeps my calendar, and that really is, organizational-wise, Brother Student Minister Corey, that is just phenomenal, because every day I hit my phone, I get a text that tells me all my updates. I have people call her directly, so she's my protocol, but she's also my administrative assistant. And so she keeps all of that together, mosque and our nonprofit, and get that information. And her reports are usually very good. She's prior to 75, just committed and competent, and that makes it very good.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Whenever you send that other one, brother, I know we're working you tonight, but whenever you, about January 5th, if possible, if you're able to take just a sample of a protocol report, just a sample, and take out any, personal information, just leave that blank. I just wanted to kind of see how that looks.
I'll get that, and I can have Sister Mary. Sometime the protocol report, it may have events, it may have dates. I've got to, see exactly. Sometimes it's very personalized based on what's going on. Now, what I did have at one point, and I had a standardized captain's report for being a captain, for many years myself. I used to have reports. I'm very paper-oriented,
yes, sir.
So we did that, so I can look at that. So I'll try to find all the reports, and I'll get that. Matter of fact, all of those reports are, I got sample reports in my drive through where we could redact any personal information, but I don't think there's no real person. If it ain't a law case on it as a student minister, whatever is on it you can see. So I'm not even worried about that. We'll get it to you.
That'd be very helpful, and I'm not sure if I'm speaking for others as well, but that'd be very helpful. Since being that we're all charged with being the CEOs, so to speak, student CEOs of the mosque or heads of the mosque.
That's right.
I thank Allah for a call like this. I mean, we all striving to work. We're doing some decent work here in Charlotte, but we want to get better. We will get better. And some of these things like you're covering tonight, just so helpful. And brothers Willie and I, we talked about this before, but it's been very helpful. So thank you so much for what you've offered.
All praises due to Allah. Okay, Brother Student Minister Willie, how many student ministers do we have on the line?
I have to see. What I'll do when I look at the report from tonight, I can I'll give you a report of how many signed up so that they will participate in this particular series. So I'll have all of that for you. And some of them, there's several of them have their LOC meeting tonight, but if they can't get on, what we do is we send them a recording of it. But I'll have all of that information with you right now. I have after I send you a report, detailed report. But I know offhand, I know we have Brother Corey, we got Brother Kenneth from Rochester, Brother El Shahar from Dallas, we got Brother Kerry from the Southwest region, several people, Brother Malik from Waxahachie, Brother Robert from Austin. So we got a couple of people. I sent it out, and for those Brother Tremont from Alabama. So for those who wanted to be a part of it, that's what we roll with. And they got a few other people who just have an aspiration to be in the ministry.
Well, I'm gonna commit and put this. As a matter of fact, I have Sister Mary put this on my calendar, and every time we have it, I'm just gonna be on just to be on. And like the last time I was when I was traveling, but I just want to thank you again, Brother Student Minister Willie, for this, not just because I was able to present, but just the spirit. And I really think that it's very needed. And really, what we put together for the 10-10-15 and what we've put together, and, we want to put something like this together to say, listen, what is the course? Because we talked about this in our laborers meeting a couple of weeks ago. And, it's an on-the-job training, but we can't keep having on-the-job training.
Right.
We have to have formalized courses, and this really, I like this. This is like a course. I really, you got to send me Dr. Wesley's recording that I can listen to that.
Yes, sir.
And so I'm going to commit to be on the call and to be a part of this and to learn. Brother Demetric is coming on. Man, he's just a fantastic student. When you look at how he defends the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in his writings, defending Farrakhan. So we got some brilliant scholars. Minister Corey, yourself down there.
Yes.
Charlotte is. I love Charlotte. I've been through Charlotte, I think, maybe a couple of times. So I'm looking to come to some of the cities. And Brother Kenneth, I know from Rochester, we grew up together back in the 80s. I think I remember when Brother Kenneth, I used to come up from Buffalo, and I was the first officer and the captain in Buffalo back in the 80s and in the early 90s. So I'm honored, to be on, and I look forward to us growing together, as that royal priesthood. That that's what we represent, And as the minister told us the other day, we were with him he talked about the movie The Passion of Christ. And for those of us that haven't seen it, that movie opens up with Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. And I think it opens up with that. That's the last time I remember watching it the other day. And, of course, Peter and the other two disciples are doing what? They're sleeping. And the minister is in the garden right now. And since that which he has, what he's given to us should make us be able to beat prophecy. I close with this last thing. I asked the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, I think it was in 2012, I said, dear Apostle, why are we not more successful than we are? And it's like we're taking an open book test. Since we say 75%, and I'll be very quick, Brother Student Minister Willie, 75% of the scripture that we got that talks about the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad is prophecy. So I'm saying, why are we not more successful? Because it's like we're taking an open book test. He said to me two things. He said, prophecy have to be fulfilled. And I asked him, I said, well, Brother Minister, dear Apostle, I forgot exactly how I said, but you taught us that we can beat prophecy. He said, yes. To the degree you believe I am who you say I am is to the degree we'll be successful. Who do they say I am? So here we are in the Garden of Gethsemane. How do we see the minister? And to the degree that we see him for who he is, Allah's represented, sitting in that messianic seat of the Christ, then our falling asleep is less likely because we will be working in the vineyard. While Jesus is praying, we should be watching and praying. And while that messianic figure who sits in the seat of the Messiah, making him the Messiah in our midst, then we should be working. And that's the thing. Do we fully understand God's intervention in our affairs in the form of a well-made man, Master Muhammad, and the two that he's given to us? And so we've got to see the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan for who he is as it relates to God and his Christ and as it relates to the prophecies. And I think it's in the third, it says it's in the Supreme Wisdom Instructions of Labor number 3. What is meant by the laborer's answers in the past, present, and future being perfect is that we must be able to prove at all times to the new converts that the lessons that our Savior Allah gave us to study and learn is the fulfillment of the prophecies of all of the former prophets concerning the beginning of the devil, the ending of the civilization, and of our present-day delivery from the devil by our Savior Allah. Praise his holy name. Are we able to show these prophecies that it relates to him and to us in the time? And when we do that, this class, Minister Willie, as we go through, will strengthen us to be able to do that. So I thank you. And we preachers, so we can talk. We think of another subject, we be on it again. So I'm gonna stop right there.
Brother, you shared so much, and I know that I can speak for myself. It's just helpful, man. And you know, even when you talk about by talking about what you all are doing in San Diego, you personally shown me and confirmed for some things that we're trying to do here locally, but for others of how we can, at the time, because our mouths can't free us up at this time, but how we can free ourselves up and still be, you know, still have a way of providing for ourselves and doing the mosque work. So we thank you. So for everybody who's on the call, you know, for after every course, we send out an online assessment. An assessment is just like an activity that further will help us in our training and our development. So I'm going to send you some words, an article by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and it has some questions and answers. Thus far, we've had 3 assignments, and the last assignment, the only two people that did it was Brother Allen. Shout out to Brother Allen and Brother Lawrence. So I know everybody is busy, but, man, take the time out. You'll be amazed the jewels that have been printed in the Final Call newspaper that can help us with our leadership, that, you know, that we just take a few minutes. It don't take long to be able to do. So I'm going to save this recording, and we're going to send it out to everybody. Then I'll send out also the assignment, and I'll be sending out soon the next person that's going to come on and do an actual who's going to come on and do the next actual series. But thank you, Brother Hugh. We greatly appreciate it. You know what?
Thank you, sir. Alhamdulillah.